Hi, my name's Rachel, and I'm going to be talking to you today about how to build better with 3Box User Data Cloud. This is me. I'm the dev role lead at 3Box. I joined in November this year, so I've been with the team for about 4 months. If anyone wants to follow me on Twitter, please do. Always like more followers. Cool. So let's start with the problem statement. We know that user data is broken on the web. For users, obviously, they're very stressed. This is something that most people are kind of worried about on some level today. Well, it's not really a walk in the park for developers either, because you're having to manage a lot of complexity around user data and all the infrastructure that goes with that. And that can be very demotivating when you want to focus on the core value of what you're building and not maintaining all of this data. And also, there's risks associated with this as well. So hopefully you don't want your users' data to become hacked or exposed, but also things like GDPR, etc. So we're proposing a system where we build data systems around users rather than applications. So if you see here on the side over here, we've got what we're kind of used to with Web 2.0. Whenever you create a profile, it goes onto like Facebook servers or the government or whoever is running that site, and you really lose control over it. It doesn't really belong to you after you've created it. To move to a system that's more like the one on the far side there, where we actually have your data centered around you and these applications that can use data rather than manage it. So it's kind of a way to flip how we think about data, and it's quite a fundamental difference in how we architect user data. This has a lot of benefits for users. First of all, we can create systems that give users much more agency and transparency over their data. And of course, this is very empowering for users. We can give users cryptographic access control, and we can also build data that can be used across platforms and applications, so you don't see users getting locked into sites that maybe have their social graph, or they don't need to recreate the same profile data every time they join a new application. Granular access control, so you can choose what data you give to who. And hopefully this can stop user data being the product, which we see a lot of today, and we can build applications that are of true value to users. So the technology the movement that's kind of powering this is decentralized identity, and this is the sphere that we're working in at 3Box. So at 3Box, we have a user data cloud, and this can take a lot of the hard work out from you from managing user data. Here I have a very high-level diagram of the technology we're using at 3Box. So you can see here that we are integrating with Ethereum wallets, be it MetaMask, Portis, whichever wallet you want to work with. And then from that, we are generating a 3ID or a decentralized identifier. And this identifier has keys attached to it so that users can encrypt data, they can sign data, and the data is ultimately stored on IPFS for 3Box. We're using OrbitDB, which gives a database layer on top of IPFS there as well. And then we can see at the bottom, you can pull this into your decentralized application. So hopefully something you might be building this weekend at the hackathon, and it will allow you to access the user's data if they consent to it within your application. So that's kind of how it all plays together on a very high level. And it's really nice because as developers, we can actually start to see that we can separate out our app logic and what we're building from the kind of data management system. So here we've got, your awesome DApp. We're going to see a lot of these this weekend, hopefully a lot with 3Box as well. So you have your app logic. You might be using a blockchain, whether it's for payments or if you're using a smart contract. And then everything on the far side there, which is in a box, this can be managed for you by 3Box, but you can actually make use of it through our SDKs. So really, it actually simplifies your life a lot as a developer, and you don't need to worry about, running a server or how you're going to create different identities for users and how you're going to manage that. It's taking a lot of complexity away from you and making you focus on what's happening over here, which is hopefully what you want to focus on as a developer, and we can actually build some really cool products that are really going to fit our users' need. Yep, for developers, this is awesome because we have distributed database storage. You don't need to worry about working with IPFS directly. You can use 3Box, and it's a very intuitive developer experience. I'll give you a glimpse of that in a minute. We can build data-rich applications, so giving the kind of functionality that users are used to from Web 2.0 into the kind of distributed and Web 0.3 space. And really nicely, you can do all of this using just front-end code. I'm a React developer, so I really like this. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Here's an overview of our web development or dApp development tools. So we have Spaces and Profiles APIs. This is for user storage. Profiles, we made, this is our first kind of storage space, and it's been designed with a view of having profiles and global namespacing, essentially. But it functions very similarly to Spaces, which can be more context-specific and for your app. Both of Spaces and Profiles, you can either store data encrypted and private, or you can store it just public there. So depending on the data that you're handling, it's up to you. We've got our Threads API. So this is where it starts to get a lot more social. You can have groups, you can have members, and you can create collaborative communication. So it's really good for anything that's more sociable. So content feeds, walls, messaging, this kind of thing. We have persistent threads. Persistent threads are persisted to IPFS, as the name suggests. And we also have ghost threads. Ghost threads are making use of IPFS PubSub tool to just facilitate in-memory peer-to-peer messaging. So really good for anything that's ephemeral that you don't need to persist. Great for chat if you just want to have a kind of chat that you drop in really easily. And to make things even easier, we created a suite of plugins. And this is going to be like gold dust in Hackathon because you can just drop these in. These are React components that are using the APIs underneath them to give you like pretty much out-of-the-box functionality. So things like profile hover, it's a way to view a profile. We also have a profile edit component, a comments thread, a chat box as well. So there's a lot of ways you can use these in the hackathon. And very excitingly today, we are super pleased to announce a big milestone in our development. Oh, how's it gone? Sorry, my bad. There we go. We have launched our confidential threads API, which should load in a minute. This is really, really excellent for development because you can. So what's happening here? How's it going? Apologies about this. We've launched our confidential threads API, and this will allow you to create threads that can be encrypted. So you can have messaging, you can have encrypted chat across groups. So there's so many uses for this in a hackathon, whether you want to make a kind of private social media site. We had somebody on our channel joking about, it's Valentine's Day and we're all here, so like maybe somebody wants to make a dating app using, confidential threads. There's a lot of use cases. You can have this kind of encrypted thread messaging in your app. Hopefully, when I click present, it will actually go to the next slide. Okay, cool. So, of course, we're sponsoring bounties. So we've got 5,000 DAI in total, so it's pretty big. The first one we have is best overall integration. So whatever you're using 3Box for, enter into that one. We're looking for some really inspiring and innovative use cases there. Most social application. So that's an application that specifically uses our Threads API. That could be the confidential or regular threads, ghost or persistent. It's up to you. But a kind of a social application built on top of 3Box. And we've got 1,000 DAI for that as well. And we also have bounties for storage, a use of our plugin. And the last one over here, we have a no-code integration with dApp Hero. So dApp Hero is another project that's here, and they've built a no-code tool which uses 3Box and Webflow. So you can work with that if you're completely non-technical, if you're a product manager, if you're business. This is a really nice way to prototype and build in a no-code environment. So yeah, that's our bounties. Cool. So I was going to do a little quick demo. So I'm just going to jump over. Make this a little bit bigger. So I have a bit of boilerplate here, and it's running in the browser here, and we can see we've got just some boilerplate, and it's connected into MetaMask, and it's pulled my MetaMask address, and it's enabled the provider. And I'm just printing out the Ethereum address. Looks pretty ugly. It's a hex code. It's not very user-friendly. So here we have, this is the code that's just enabling MetaMask. And then, if I can just see my cursor, here we go. First thing we're going to do, which is the most minimal way that you can use 3Box, is to use our profile hover component. And all you need to do that is just import it. I've already installed it in this boilerplate. Profile hover, from profile hover. And then I'm just going to scroll down to where I was printing out the Ethereum address. I'm going to replace it with the profile hover component, and we're going to see that instead of an ugly hex address, we're going to get a much more user-friendly profile. So scroll down. Here we go. Hover. And it's just taking one attribute here, which is the user's Ethereum address. If I save that and go over and reload, that's npm start. And once it starts, we should see that, we'll see that nice 3-box profile. So we can see that already this is a lot more user-friendly. At the moment, we've still got the hex address, but we can just add in another attribute. I think it's show name. There's quite a few attributes that you can customize it to. It's all documented. Save that. And then, cool. So we've got my name there, Rachel. Where is this name coming from, you might ask, if you're completely new to 3Box. You can actually embed the functionality to edit this profile within your application. It's just the global 3Box Profiles API. But you can also go to 3Box Hub, which is basically the app that we built essentially to showcase what's possible with 3Box, but it's also like a dog feeding site for us. And you can see that this is where you can set up your profile. And if I change something in here, it will also be reflected in the profile that I'm using in my demo app. So it's actually really nice that users can, once they set a profile up on here, then any app that's enabled with 3Box, they already have a username, they already have an avatar, and they don't need to go through the pain of creating it all over again. But as I say, this is like the lowest touch use of 3Box. You can see it really doesn't take very long at all to get rid of those hex codes. So like hopefully we're going to see very few hex codes in this hackathon because there's no excuse to. The next thing I was going to show you quickly is just how to authenticate with 3Box and how to store some key value data with 3Box. So I'm going to pop over back to my code. For this, we're going to need to authenticate, we're going to need to open a box, and then we can work with it. So first of all, I'll import the 3Box library. .3box. Cool. And then, a second, I'm just going to copy and paste a little bit for this because I don't want to. So in my React app, I'm going to go down to here, which is after where I've enabled the provider that MetaMask injects, and I'm actually going to start working with 3Box. Obviously, we want to have our provider enabled, and we want to have the user's Ethereum address before we start working with it, otherwise it's going to throw errors. So in here, what we're going to do is first create an instance of 3Box. So we have my address, which has been saved to state. We have spaces. You can see this is an array. So if you had like multiple spaces that you wanted to work with, just add them into the array. We've only got one here. Then I'm going to create the box here, Now I'm just passing in the provider that MetaMask injects. And then I'm going to authenticate it. So here I'm authenticating with the spaces and the address, and then just calling a sync method on it, then saving it to state. So now that we've done that, we can open a space, which is here we go. So to open a space, it's pretty intuitive. We're just using async await because obviously we're working with some asynchronicity when we're working with 3Box and the IPFS network. Open a space. If that space doesn't exist, it will create it. And then I'm setting that to state. So now that's all I need to do to set up authenticating with 3Box and creating a space and everything. So this is much more minimal than kind of potentially working direct with IPFS and trying to set up the systems around there. So now it should be ready for us to set some data to it, and I'm going to try and retrieve it as well. And here. So again, we have very intuitive developer experience. So you can see we just have space public set. So that's just setting some data to the public, setting some data in public form to the space. And it just takes two arguments. These are key value pairs. So here we have the first argument's going to be the key, and the second one will be the value. So key is test, and the value will be hello world. If we want to change it and store data in a private and encrypted way, we just switch public to private, and we have space.private.set. And again, I can use the same key because I'm in private rather than public here, and I can pass in a different value of shush for private. Cool. So if I save that, of course we want to actually retrieve this. So I'm going to public message equals assigned to await. And then just as we have the set method, we're going to use the get method on the same space. Space.public.get. And this only takes one argument. We're just going to pass in the key of the value that we want to retrieve. In this case, it's test. And private message await space dot private get and test. Okay, I'm going to try and console log this out and moment of truth. Hopefully I haven't put any typos in. Okay. Private message. Save that, and then if I jump over to the browser again, open up the inspector, and it should, if I hadn't authenticated with this space before, I would see MetaMask asking me to consent. So everything we do with the user's consent, but if I have already consented, then it might not pop up. And if we give it a minute, hopefully once it's connected to, yeah, we can see it. It's just small. There we go. So we can see it's actually console logging out the hello world and the shush, which are the values that we wanted to retrieve from the user's public and private storage there. So pretty straightforward, pretty minimal way to work with it, and certainly a lot less pain than trying to configure working with IPFS directly and managing user data around that. If anyone is interested, there's actually a whole tutorial which takes you through connecting this up, and you can connecting it up to the front end and creating private and public storage, so I can share that with you. But yeah, we are also, we have a lot of stuff online, so all of our documentation's at docs.3box.io. We have a very active Discord channel, and all of our dev team are on there throughout ETHDenver, and we're pretty much on there all the time anyway, which you can find at chat.3box.io. Medium, obviously everything we do is open source, so you can check out our GitHub. And also just the kind of typical, we are hiring slides, so if anyone is really interested in 3Box. It's a really awesome product and a great team. So yeah, just get in contact. These are the roles that we have open. Yeah, so thank you. We also have a stand just at the top near the stairs on the second floor. So like pop by, we've got a lot of whiskey stones, we've got like some swag, and like we're happy to chat to anyone who has any ideas and wants to figure out how they can work 3Box into their hackathon project as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, we got time for about one question.
Okay, so this is a little bit different than the content you presented, but I'm curious about the access control. The access control, is there, so the functions there, the cryptography there, is that all kind of baked into 3Box at this point, or can you kind of plug in other options or protocols?
So it's a little noisy here, so I couldn't quite hear. So it's around access control and wondering if it's possible to plug in other systems. Which systems do you mean, like other blockchains or?
Say, of course I'm blanking on the name in public here. I'll catch you later.
Cool. But yeah, anyone is interested, we are actually blockchain agnostic by design. At the moment, we're working with Ethereum, but we will be integrating with other blockchains in the future because we don't touch the blockchain directly. So it is opportunity to kind of work outside of Ethereum, but this is very much where we are right now. Cool.
Okay, one more question. Can I give you the mic here?
So I saw in the slides identity wallets as well as the 3ID. So what's the relationship there? Do you have to go through, obviously it looked like you don't have to go through 3ID to access an identity wallet. Is that correct? Or how does that work?
Identity wallet. So today I've been showing you 3Box.js, which is the SDK that you'd be using if you weren't a wallet, basically, or if you didn't want to. 3Box.js works in the front-end JavaScript environment. Identity wallet works with wallets, but it also works in a Node.js environment. So depending on your need, it's just a way for you to embed 3ID directly into the wallet.
Okay, got it.
Cool.
And we got about one more minute. One more question?
Hi. The private spaces, does it mean that the content is encrypted or just not visible?
So does it mean that it's?
Encrypted, the content?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So in the private space, the data is stored encrypted, yes. Cool. Well, thank you. Come and visit our booth. We've got stickers and whiskey stones.
Thank you, Rachel.
Cheers.